Inflation's too high, the Fed's under fire, and Trump is ready to take the wheel again. But does Ben Shapiro give it to you straight, or just serve conservative comfort food? Let's get into the real talk. This is Destination Recap. Trump versus Powell, the economic beef. Ben explains why Trump wants to fire Jerome Powell if he wins. He claims Powell's monetary tightening is hurting working Americans.
Panicking now over supposed polls showing President Trump's decreased popularity. And those panicans, like actual panicans, are people looking at the Gallup polls and saying that Trump is in the high 30s and this is the collapse of his presidency and it's all Epstein. And okay, let's get real for just 1 second. The actual statistics on President Trump's popularity are about where they have always been. And I think it's worthwhile noting that because despite all of the water that he has supposedly taken on with things like Epstein, it just isn't really true. According to the Wall Street Journal, buoyed by voters' improving views of the economy, President Trump's political standing is showing notable resilience, a new Wall Street Journal poll finds. Despite the unpopularity of the GOP's big tax and spending law, dissatisfaction with Trump's tariff plan, and high suspicion the government is hiding important information about its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Some 46% approve of his job performance, unchanged from April, with 52% disapproving. 88% of GOP voters approve of his job performance and 66% strongly approve. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that President Trump, his support is durable. And the real reason why his support is durable is because life is as good or better than it was back in February or March in the United States. That is the actual real reason. We have not seen the sort of economic collapse that many people were predicting, largely because Trump backed off of many of the tariff rates that he was pushing on Liberation Day. Instead, we are seeing trade deals brokered by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. As I've said before, President Trump is not chickening out here. This is called responding to reality. Life in the United States is safer because President Trump took concerted and brave action in bombing the Iranian nuclear facilities, despite actual panicans in the Republican Party suggesting that it was going to lead to World War III. Not only did that not happen, it put Iran on its back foot in a serious way and may completely reshape the Middle East.
But didn't Trump praise low interest rates and even pressure Powell to keep them? Is this about economic justice or revenge politics? The Fed is crushing the poor. Ben argues that the continued rate hikes are choking credit, housing, and jobs.
Because of regulations and all the rest. So at one point, President Trump got pissed at Powell and started arguing with him about the cost of the renovation. And Powell came back at President Trump and he said, well, actually, our costs have not gone up, Mr. President. You're just mischaracterizing this. Here is the back and forth.
So we're taking a look, and it looks like it's about $3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
It just came out.
Our notes said it about 3.1 as well.
3.1.
3.2. This came from us?
Yes. I don't know who does that.
You were including the market renovation. You just added
our entire capital.
You just added in a third building. Is what that is. That's a third building.
Well, no, but it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago.
Okay, so
We finished
again,
5 years later.
in a normal era, people might panic over this because there's the president of the United States chiding the Federal Reserve chair in front of everybody about these construction supposed overruns. Trump clearly came prepared. I mean, he had an actual paper in his pocket with the cost on the Federal Reserve reconstruction, and he handed it to Powell. And Powell immediately looks at it and he goes, Mr. President, you're including here a building that we completed 5 years ago. So Powell happens to be right about this. The bottom line is that President Trump seems to be playing around the edges with the idea that perhaps someone will get rid of Jerome Powell for alleged corruption, that maybe somebody in Congress will do something about all of this. Trump was asked about cost overruns. What would you do if you were leading a construction project and somebody went into cost overrun? And President Trump said, I'd fire him.
Funny how concern for the working class shows up only when it's politically convenient. Weren't these the same voices cheering on free markets during rent spikes? Bidenomics is fake. Ben mocks the idea that Biden's economic strategy is working, calling it media spin.
Of Chair Powell for a while. He made a major policy mistake that saw inflation go up to 9%. We had supervision of banks problems. There were insider trading allegations to his committee. There's mission creep. The list goes on. I think that Chair Powell now has decided to redefine his legacy in terms of protecting the independence of the Fed. But by staying on, he's actually threatening the independence of the Fed. So those of us who believe that an independent central bank is critical to economic outcomes think that the right thing for him to do is to step down.
Now, if he were to step down and President Trump were to put, for example, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in his place, that has been one of the conversations. Kevin Hassett has been discussed as a possible Federal Reserve chairman. There's some other people who have been discussed. If that were to happen, they would likely also not lower the interest rates at this point in time, given the fact that there is a little bit of upward pressure that we are seeing on inflation in terms of prices. And really the only thing that's holding that back is lowered demand. That yes, tariffs are or would increase prices, except that demand has fallen off at the same time. And so what that means, the prices have basically stayed stable. So if President Trump would like for the interest rates to decrease, then he should cut a bunch of trade deals, and then the interest rates are going to go down, whether it's Powell or anybody else.
Sure, inflation is real. But was it not a global issue post-COVID? What would Trump's Fed have done differently besides shouting cut rates? Powell's independence is under threat. Ben suggests Powell might get ousted for not aligning with Trump's economic goals.
President Trump pushing forward on an attempt to fix America's major cities. He's directing federal agencies to find ways to make it easier to forcibly hospitalize homeless people with mental illness and addiction for longer periods, an effort to fight what the administration calls vagrancy, threatening the streets of U.S. cities, according to the Washington Post. An executive order signed Thursday pushes federal agencies to overturn state and federal legal precedent that limits how local and state governments can involuntarily commit people who pose a risk to themselves or others. The order says that shifting homeless people into long-term institutional settings will restore public order. The order says surrendering our cities and citizens to disorder and fear is neither compassionate to the homeless nor other citizens. This is 100% true. This is 100% true. A huge percentage of people who are living on America's streets are either mentally ill, like seriously mentally ill, or drug addicts, or both. And the notion that it is some sort of act of benevolence to keep those people living on the streets in penury, in terrible conditions, that this is an aspect of American freedom, that a core liberty involves living on the street in your own feces while you are diseased and you have a disease of the mind, like why that is a good thing is beyond me. Absolutely beyond me. Now, I have relatives who have been mentally ill. If they were simply allowed to lie around on the street, that would not be a good thing. That would not be a worthwhile thing.
If the Fed becomes a political puppet, what's stopping future leaders from manipulating markets for elections? That's not populism. It's sabotage. Ben outlines Trump's likely economic playbook: slash regulation, gut the Fed, pump growth.
New York City for protecting illegal aliens with sanctuary policies. Again, a move by the president to clean up America's major cities. This goes back to why the president retains a fairly high level of popularity, particularly for President Trump, who's, again, he's been president before, and his popularity rating is still 46% according to the Wall Street Journal, which is near his historic highs. Why? Because he actually is focused on improving life of people, even in places that didn't vote for him, like New York City. According to Breitbart, President Trump's Department of Justice has now filed a lawsuit against New York City, New York, Mayor Eric Adams, over the city's new sanctuary policies that shield illegal aliens from federal immigration enforcement. And this, of course, is another problem that has plagued America's major cities, is people who are living off the books and who are violating the law and who are affecting quality of life. And again, that is not unsympathetic toward people who are crossing the border for economic reasons. That is just a reality, is that American citizens deserve to be protected and defended, and their cities should not be turned into repositories for poverty and crime through no actual will of their own.
Short-term sugar highs always look good until the crash comes. Just ask 2008. Is Ben just defending Trump's plan or exposing how fragile the US economy really is? Should the Fed be independent or take orders from whoever's in the White House? If you're tired of hearing the same old left versus right spin and want real breakdowns without bias, like, comment, and sub to Destination Recap.